Hey everyone, how's it going? Coming to y'all with yet another acoustic guitar review, and this time we're looking at an Archtop. Currently the only Archtop that I own, in fact. This is the K6878 Leader. Now before I get too far into this, I do want to say a couple of things. The first one, as always, if you're a shut up and play kind of guy, you can skip this video because it's not for you. This is not an acoustic guitar tone demonstration video. I'll attempt to give an acoustic guitar tone demonstration later on, although with me being this far away from my phone, which is what I'm using to record this, by the way, as a phone, with me being this far away from it, the phone mic is not going to pick things up very well, so it's not going to sound. I've noticed that no matter what. Whenever I'm this far away on camera, my guitars never sound nearly like they should. They always sound tinny, and they sound thin, when in real life they sound so much better. So it's not going to be a great example of what it actually sounds like. For that, I do want to start recording some more guitar comparisons, where I'm going to have a microphone set up, about 4 inches away from the front of the guitars, as I compare guitar versus guitar, and that's a much better capture of how things actually sound. So if you want to see this compared against a flat top, let me know, and I can record something like that. But this is more going to be me going over what I think of the guitar, who I think it's suited for, how does it feel, how does it play, is it worth the money, some history on it, things like that. The next thing I want to say is if you're a jazz player who came here to only hear me play jazz stuff, and are one of the people who believe that Archtops are only for jazz Archtops are only for jazz guitarists and jazz music, this video is also not going to be for you, because I'm going to be directly opposing those views and voicing why I think it's asinine that many players feel that since they don't play jazz, an Archtop guitar is of no use to them. Okay? Now, that said, if you buy an Archtop guitar expecting it to do all the things your flat top can do, you're gonna be disappointed. It's not a flat top guitar. It's not sonically designed to have the same kind of sound as a flat top guitar. And it's got a completely different tone, completely different voice, and completely different purpose from a flat top guitar. Is it better than a flat top? No. Is a flat top better than it? No. They simply have different uses and different roles. Flat tops can do things the Archtop can't even dream of, and Archtops can perform tasks and give sounds that the flat tops can't even spell right. It really is a matter of using the right tool for the job, much like nylon string guitars or classical guitars versus steel string guitars. Okay? That's kind of the next thing to get into is another term you'll hear Archtops called all the time is jazz boxes, kind of perpetuating that idea that they are just for jazz. And they are primarily for jazz. That's what they get used for the most, but it's not all they can be used for. They have a very live and very rich history with country western and rockabilly music. Mother Maybelle Carter played a Gibson L5 Archtop. Johnny Cash played a Hofner Congress. These are Archtop guitars from huge country music names. So yeah, you can absolutely use Archtops for more than just jazz. It's not a matter of the genre, it's a matter of how you're playing a song that determines whether or not an Archtop or a flat top is better suited for you. Now, what I mean by that, and this may be a longer video because I'm gonna try to go over this as best I can, they excel in very different areas. Flat tops have this beautiful shimmer, for the most part, on their high end. Even your bassier flat tops are going to have a lot of sustain and a lot of top end shimmer when compared to an Archtop. That is really well suited for slower, more methodical style playing, because the note will ring for longer and it's going to have more of a chime to it. Whereas Archtops, first of all, can be much louder than the average flat top if played in the way that they are meant. They're designed for more of a balanced sound with a lot of punch, but a very quick audible decay. So what I mean by that, and actually I'll grab, this is not a comparison video, but just for the sake of it, I'm not even sure if this is in tune. This is a Martin that I own. Close enough. So you may hear that top end. Set this here for now. Same thing here. It's a lot flatter on that high end, and it's dying a lot faster, as you may hear. Now, the reason why is these are designed to have more of an immediate punch. So, for a jazz style thing, okay, you're meant to kind of hit it and then mute it. Whereas with a flat top, we can do the same thing here. Yeah, it can perform the same task, but in my opinion, and many other people's opinions, not as well as the Archtop. In much the same way that the Archtop can perform the task of playing those other genres and styles of music, but not as well as the flat top. It's just a matter of grabbing the right tool for the job. Do you want to use a hammer and a nail, or do you want to use a drill bit, a power drill, and a screw? It's very much a matter of just finding the appropriate place for the sound. So, in country music in particular, things like Wildwood Flower were very quick note to note without letting everything ring too much. So an Archtop works really well for that. For Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison Blues was a song recorded on his old Hofner Congress, and Johnny did what a lot of people call the train style rhythm. So it's a lot of kind of a palm muting action. So because we're not letting the notes ring all too much, that immediate punch we get from these Archtops is really, really useful and sounds good in that application. Okay? Does a flat top still sound good in that application? Yeah, it does. But an Archtop is going to have more of an immediate punch to it, more of an immediate bang to it, which is what they're for. Okay, these are designed to be played in concerts, and so they had to compete with woodwinds and brass instruments and other things like that that are very, very, very loud. So it's all about that potential maximum volume when being hit in short bursts. Okay. Now I'm sure some people can come in the comment section and explain that far better than I did, but just kind of I guess a bit of a lesson as far as to what these things are actually used for, so you know what you're getting into when buying an Archtop. Now, my very first acoustic guitar ever that I largely learned how to play on was an Airline Archtop. I think it was the N2, or N1 or N2. And I loved that thing, the big baseball bat neck with no truss rod that it had. The action was great on it. I liked the sound of it, and it didn't hurt that I was a big Johnny Cash fan. So, yeah, it worked really well for all of the Johnny Cash stuff that I played. And that's the reason I got this, was kind of to help remember my very first acoustic guitar, because it's similar in a lot of ways. Now, I will say this is not exactly a standard production version of this guitar. From the people I've talked to, looking through catalogs and every bit of research I've done, this was a prototype, and a few of these were made. And the differences between this and the production version aren't that drastic. The finish is one of them. The production version had, what was it, a vintage sunburst? Let's see here. Yeah, so the production version came in a dark vintage sunburst versus this kind of tobacco burst, honey burst, whatever this technically would qualify as. There's so many different names for different bursts. But this is a much lighter burst, more brown on tan, or brown on kind of an amber color. The next difference is the neck. So they're both bolt-on necks, but you can see this doesn't have a neck plate, and it's a 3-bolt design in a kind of a triangle, okay, position like so, where there's one bolt on one side and two on the others. The production version had a neck plate and a 4-bolt design where it was rectangular, so 2 and 2, which honestly is a better design for stability and a better design for if you have to shim the neck, which I did have to do with this, and because of the weird bolt design, to get it to set right, I had to experiment a little bit, so there's that. The next difference is going to be the headstock. They have the same shape, but you can see this doesn't have a headstock logo, and at first I thought it might just be missing one. Turns out, no, because the headstocks were pinned in. The headstock logos were pinned in. They were a metal badge. This doesn't have any holes, nor does it have any residue where one might have been glued on, because it never had one. It was never meant to be sold at retail, so it doesn't have that. And it also has a different pick guard. This has this kind of translucent red, whereas the official one had a, what was it, I have it written down somewhere here, white pick guard. White or black. It had, different versions had different pick guard colors, but never this translucent red. And, oh yeah, one more difference is the retail version had a second strap button. This has one down here, but not one up here. So the retail version would have had one right here behind this bolt-on neck. So another way that the retail version was superior to this version. Okay? Now going over all this, you may own a K6878 and say, well, I have one and it looks nothing like that. It doesn't sound anything like what you're even describing. And that'll be true because this is a 1969 model. Prior to 1969, these guitars, the same model, the 6878 leader, had an entirely different design and was very much a different guitar. Like, it had the same body shape, but it didn't use this, the bolt-on neck. I'm pretty sure it was a set neck. Didn't have a truss rod. This does have a truss rod, by the way, as you can see the truss rod cover there. It was a steel reinforced neck, so it also wasn't the same neck profile. This is not a slim neck, but it's much slimmer than the baseball bat necks you would get on later models, or on earlier models. Whereas the older versions would have that big baseball bat neck with a steel reinforced rod in it that you couldn't adjust. So this is specifically a review on a 1969 K leader and a prototype at that. But material-wise and construction-wise, it's still largely the same as the retail version of the leader from 1969. So it should still give you an idea of what these guitars feel like and sound like if you were interested in buying one for yourself. Okay? So that is all of that. The body shape on this, by the way, is called a Super Auditorium. If you're wondering what that means, it's basically the same thing as a Grand Auditorium. So yeah, no, Taylor didn't invent this shape. Grand Auditorium, Super Auditorium, Mini Jumbo, it's all the same thing. It basically means you have a very broad, very wide body down here, a bit of a tight waist, and then it flares out towards the top. Kind of a half step between a concert and a dreadnought. So the idea is that this is meant to help kind of compete with those larger bodied guitars and other instruments. And it does a good job of that. And yes, this will fit perfectly into a Taylor Grand Auditorium case. I own one that I use for one of my Ibanez acoustic electrics, and I've tried putting this in there. It fits like a glove. So, same dimensions, guys. Yeah, cool body shape. I've seen similar models, by the way. They have the 6858 and 6868, which are the same guitars, just with different finishes. They have, instead of a sunburst finish, they have a natural finish, or a, there's another finish that one of those comes in. It's all 58, 68, 78, it's all the same guitar, just different finishes, basically. Materials, we have a arched laminate maple top, laminate maple sides, and an arched laminate maple back. Love the wood on that, by the way. Yeah, it's laminate, but I still love it. Maple neck, and worth noting, this does have a volute on the neck. It's not the Martin style diamond volute, but it is a volute nonetheless. Maybe you can see that. So it is a good strong neck that shouldn't break on you. So maple neck, rosewood fingerboard and bridge. Okay, and there's no saddle on this because it is an archtop guitar, although some archtops do have saddles. The strings are just sitting inside of that rosewood bridge. We have a trapeze tailpiece. One interesting thing to note about this is we have a 0 fret, so the plastic nut on here doesn't even matter because it's not affecting your sound at all thanks to that 0 fret. That's the first thing the strings are coming across. And the reason I love a good 0 fret is because now your open strings sound like your chorded strings whenever you're playing. Because everything is still fretted, technically. So it's got a very consistent sound, whereas if you don't have a 0 fret, sometimes your open strings can have a wildly different sound than your fretted strings. Just kind of a cool feature that I personally think is really nice. Already showed you we do have a truss rod cover there. We take that off to adjust the truss rod. And it is a big boat oar of a headstock. These tuners have been replaced. They originally came with open gear 3-on-a-plate tuners. They've since been replaced with Kluson no lines, which are also a 3-on-a-plate closed back design, which hold tune far better than the original open gear tuners. And that is one of the downsides on a lot of these vintage guitars, especially these Sears and Roebuck type guitars, is the tuning machines on them are almost always garbage. Now you can replace them with really high-end, really nice open gear machines to keep that super vintage feel. That's a great way to go. I felt like these still had a good vintage feel to them, and they hold tune really well, and I was able to get them for basically nothing. So that's what I did. Maybe one day I'll put some Golden Gate restoration tuners on here if I feel like it's worth it, and spend as much on the tuners as I did on the guitar, because I bought this for like $130 or something like that, with the original chipboard case, which I should have brought up to show you, but I'm sure you all know what a chipboard case is by now. A padded gig bag would be an upgrade, and I have since bought this hard shell case. So, is that all the tech specs on this here guitar? Oh, forgot to mention mother of pearl dot inlay on the Rosewood fretboard. And now that it's all the tech specs on the guitar, as soon as I know that it has a 1 inch and 11/16 nut, I didn't bother with the scale length because it's a bit trickier to pin down on these, because with Archtops you kind of have to fiddle with that bridge to get everything intonated, and you typically measure the scale length by going from the 12th fret to the bridge saddle. So, you know, it's going to be different for everybody, as they're all going to be set up a little bit differently. It doesn't really matter. What matters is it's intonated, it sounds good, and it plays well. Now I do have the action on here right where I like it, nice and low, and it plays like a dream. Now I did have to adjust the truss rod to get it as straight as I could, and there's still a bit of relief in this neck. I couldn't get it all out, but I got most of the relief out, and then I had to shim the neck a little bit by making sure that there was an additional set of shim towards the bottom end of the neck to kind of raise this section up, because as it was, the strings were really high off the fretboard down here on the lower frets. So by simply putting a shim primarily towards the end of that neck section, I was able to get that raised up. I still had to shim a little bit on the upper section as well, obviously, but I was able to kind of get it exactly where I wanted it, and now it sounds and plays beautifully. And that is a gorgeous thing about a bolt-on neck. I know a lot of people hate bolt-on necks on acoustics and electrics. I love them no matter what, because if your string action is way out of whack and you can't fix it with a truss rod adjustment or by messing with your bridge, a bolt-on neck will save your life, because it is so much easier to fix the issue yourself as opposed to taking it to a luthier and having a neck reset done. That neck reset's going to cost you at least $300. So, yeah, I was able to do mine for free here at home, without any huge expensive tools. And I have it playing really, really nicely. So I'm a big fan of bolt-on necks for that reason. The guitar, by the way, where is it made? America. Yep, these old Ks were US built. Ks and Harmonies and all the guitar brands that they made. So all your Silvertones and Sovereigns and Regals and Airlines and everything else, those were all made by K or Harmony guitars. And they were US guitars sold through big retail chains like Sears and Roebuck. That said, they're not high-end guitars by any means. If you're expecting this to sound as good as US Martin, you will have another thing coming. Do they sound bad? No. So, Ks and Harmonies and all those brands they make, and all those other guitars from that era, have a certain mojo to them. They really do. Especially these old Archtops. And as a result, they have huge cult followings. Now, where would I say this ranks compared to a modern Archtop acoustic? I would take this over a Godin Fifth Avenue. And I love Godin guitars. This doesn't mean knocking Godin. It's just the Godin Fifth Avenue doesn't really sound much like a traditional Archtop, whereas this very much sounds like a traditional Archtop, and honestly a pretty decent one. I've played much more expensive Archtops that I like the sound of far less than this. There was a time when I hated how this sounded because I hadn't set it up yet, and as a result, things weren't going smoothly. The bridge wasn't making proper contact with the body of the guitar, so everything sounded dead. Had to sand and fix that. Had to fix the action. Had to fix the neck. I had to do a bit to it, but once I've got it properly set up, I think personally this thing sounds fantastic as an Archtop guitar. I'm not sure if I would pick it over a lower LH300. I have played those before. I love the sound of those guitars, but they have a different sound to them. I would pick this neck over those for sure, because those have a hard V-neck that I just don't like. So I would definitely pick this neck over those. But honestly, I think this guitar holds up really, really well to some of the Archtop acoustics you'd find in the $500 to $700 range these days. Guitar Archtops that I've played that I think sounded better would be like the Epiphone Masterbuilt Archtops. I do think those sound a bit better, and they should because they're more expensive. Especially considering this back in the day MSRP'd for like 42 bucks. These days you'll find them closer to about 300 on the secondary market. And it's worth that. If you are a fan of Archtop guitars, it is worth that, absolutely. But if you're wondering, should I buy a vintage Archtop or a Godin Fifth Avenue, it's going to vary from vintage Archtop to vintage Archtop. But one of these, I personally think sounds better than the Godin Fifth Avenue. So that's just me. Your opinion may differ. I did forget to mention the binding, cream binding along the neck and sides of the guitar. Okay, and it is actual binding, it's not just painted on, so nice feature there. And we do have dot inlay along the side of the neck as well. Okay, I always forget something and have to cycle back to it. Anything that I forgot to mention on here? Nope, that is all the information from my tech specs. So now I can just go ahead and get into giving you some sound demonstrations. So for all the jazz guys, I will do a little bit of jazz stuff. I don't know much. I just know 2 jazz chords. Now this is strung with D'Addario XS 1152 Foster Bronze strings. So it's not really strung up in a way that's specifically built for jazz. If you wanted to make this thing super jazzy, you could buy yourself a set of Magma flat wound acoustic Foster Bronze strings, throw those on here and get that real jazzy heavy sound while still maintaining an Archtop sound, an acoustic sound. Or you could use nickel flat wounds if you prefer, but if you want to maintain the acoustic tone, I think you're better off with the Magmas. But for me, the kind of music I play, I like having these XSs on here. They sound great, they feel great, and it allows me to play a wider variety of genres with it. So if you're a fan of classic rockabilly and country and blues, this is a great guitar for you. Usually sing during these. I can't help it. So it's great for things like that. I've already showed that it's great for Johnny Cash, but I'll do another Johnny Cash song. So yeah, it has a decent sound for that. Not as good as the train beat rhythm stuff, but you can do it for that. You can use these for a wider variety than just initial punch and withdraw. It's just they're best suited to that initial punch and withdraw kind of music. Now, another thing that I think Archtops are good for, and I may get some flack for this, if you don't have a classical guitar, songs meant for classical sound a bit closer on an archtop than they do on a flat top. Because archtops, similarly to classicals, don't have a lot of sustain. Classical guitars just don't have a ton of sustain. So, like if you were to do Willie Nelson, they don't have a lot of sustain. So, like a classical guitar, these match that in how quick the sound decays. And so, a lot of songs built for nylon strings, to me, sound a bit closer on an archtop than a flat top. As for actual classical music, I'm not really a classical player. Whatever, I can't really play real classical, so closest I can do. Not as close as I'm going to get to classical music. For those of you who know what that is, God bless you. For those of you who don't worry about it. But yeah, I think these things have a great sound. Now for finger picking, they're definitely not purpose built for it, but you can do it. It's just not really what they're built for, what they're made for. Where I feel like these things are really weak is if you try to put them into modern rock, modern country, things like that, just because those really are dependent on that top-end shimmer. And so, if I were to play Whiskey Lullaby, does it sound terrible? No, but I would definitely much rather play it on one of my flat top guitars. Because again, it's just not really the tool for the job. It isn't to say anything bad about this guitar or how it sounds or bad about archtops. It's just not what they're really for. And I'm going to hammer that point home because I feel like a lot of players for guitar really bash on something that just isn't for them. And they think because of that, or because it doesn't fit their role, that it's bad. It's not really how it works. Classical guitars aren't bad just because they don't suit the kind of music you play. Archtops aren't bad just because they don't suit the music you play. Parlor guitars and double O guitars and triple O guitars aren't bad just because they don't suit the kind of music you play. For the electric guys out there, humbuckers aren't bad just because they don't suit the music you play. P90s aren't bad just because they don't suit what you play. Single coils aren't bad just because they don't suit what you play. Gold foils aren't bad just because they don't suit what you play. Everything has a place. Every kind of guitar has its own voice that really does have a place and a perfect fit somewhere. It's just a matter of making sure it's used for the right job. Okay. Now this doesn't have a pickup. I did at one point have a really cheap transducer that I put here. It was fine, but I ultimately just didn't like it all too much. So I took it off of here. If you wanted to amplify this guitar, you could put a floating Diarmond humbucker here or something, or you could buy that really expensive Fishman Archtop bridge that costs almost as much as the guitar itself. It's like a $200 pickup, and you can amplify it that way. And I'm still working on finding a way to amplify it that I'll like, because I would like to take this thing to the bar and play it. But for now, it's a great guitar to sit at home with and just jam with and really to enjoy. So yeah, I'm happy to own it. It's a great guitar that I really enjoy. I think it has a great sound. I think it feels great. I would recommend it to anyone out there who's a fan of Archtop guitars. If you're a gypsy jazz player, if you're a rockabilly player, a blues player. By the way, you can play slide on here. It does sound really good for slide. I don't have it tuned to that. I'm not a great slide player, so I can't really demonstrate that. Although for slide, you'd probably want to take the shim out and let it keep its high action. But you can absolutely play slide on it if you're a slide blues player. It sounds fantastic for that. And if you're a fan of old school blues, like Hellhound on My Trail, things like that, these guitars, they have a great mojo for that is really, really well suited. So hopefully you enjoyed this review, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Until next time, I will see you later. Peace and take care.